Handling client resistance, privacy concerns, and professional boundaries. Where compliance meets client emotion. Up to this point, we have discussed why the rule exists, when it applies, who qualifies as a beneficial owner, what information must be reported, and how the 2026 Real Estate Reporting Rule differs from the Corporate Transparency Act under 31 U.S.C. Paragraph 336. Now we move into the most practical and human aspect of the rule, how you handle client discomfort, because you will encounter it. Arizona investors often value privacy, asset protection, strategic structuring, and efficiency. When they are asked to provide personal identifying information to a federal agency as part of a residential real estate transaction, some will react emotionally. Your professionalism in that moment protects your license. In Arizona's investor-driven markets, such as Phoenix, Scottsdale, Gilbert, Mesa, and Tucson, LLC purchases are common. Many clients formed entities specifically to create privacy and liability protection. When you explain that certain residential purchases without federally regulated institutional financing may require disclosure of beneficial ownership information, you may hear strong reactions. Clients may describe the rule as government overreach. They may insist that they already filed under the Corporate Transparency Act. They may argue that they formed an LLC to avoid this exact type of disclosure. Some may even state that the deal will not close if additional information is required. The most dangerous question you may hear is there a way around this? That question requires discipline. Under ARS, paragraph 32-2153A, 1. Dishonest dealings may result in license discipline. Under AAC, R428-1101A, Arizona licensees must exercise reasonable skill and care in the performance of their duties. You must never suggest restructuring ownership percentages to fall below the 25% beneficial ownership threshold. You must not recommend layering entities to conceal identity. You must not advise dividing ownership interests to avoid reporting. You must not suggest delaying closing to avoid applicability. Even casually speculating about avoidance strategies can expose you to regulatory risk. You are a licensed professional in a regulated industry, not a strategist for regulatory evasion. The safest professional response is simple and neutral. You may state that this is a federal transparency requirement that applies to certain residential real estate transactions, and that the settlement agent will guide the reporting process. If pressed further, you may explain that you are not able to provide legal advice regarding federal reporting requirements, and that the client may wish to consult legal counsel for specific guidance. That response keeps you within your scope of practice while demonstrating professionalism and competence. It is important to understand the difference between providing factual information and providing legal advice. Arizona licensees may explain that the rule exists, that it applies to certain entity-based residential purchases, that it is separate from the Corporate Transparency Act, and that escrow or title companies typically handle the filing mechanics. However, you may not interpret federal statutes for strategic structuring purposes or provide legal opinions about how ownership should be arranged. Under AAC, R428-1101B, conduct demonstrating incompetence or untrustworthiness can result in discipline. Staying within your lane is not avoidance, it is competence. Designated brokers also carry supervision responsibilities under AAC, R428-1103. Reasonable supervision includes educating agents about material regulatory changes that affect common transaction structures. In investor-heavy brokerages, this may involve updating buyer consultation checklists to flag entity purchases, coordinating with title and escrow partners regarding reporting procedures, and providing agents with consistent language for discussing federal requirements. Brokers are not federal compliance officers, but awareness and preparation are part of professional oversight. Privacy concerns will often center on whether the information becomes public. You may reassure clients factually that beneficial ownership information submitted under federal law is not recorded with the county recorder, not entered into MLS systems, and not part of publicly searchable deed records. It is submitted to FinCEN through federal compliance systems. However, you should not guarantee data security or make promises about federal cybersecurity systems. Your role is to communicate accurately, not to provide assurances beyond your knowledge. Transparency in this context does not mean public exposure. Arizona's real estate market includes off-market investor transactions, wholesale assignments, private money lending, foreign capital investment, and portfolio acquisitions involving layered entity structures. If a client demonstrates unusual urgency to avoid disclosure or asks for assistance in structuring around transparency requirements, that is a professional red flag. You are not law enforcement, but under the reasonable skill and care standards of AAC, R4-28-1101, ignoring obvious irregularities could expose you to scrutiny. Professional neutrality and adherence to clear boundaries are your protection. For years, many real estate professionals operated under the assumption that once a transaction closed, their role ended. Beginning in 2026, certain residential closings involving legal entities and non-institutional financing may carry federal reporting obligations. This is not a shift toward fear. It is a shift toward transparency awareness. Arizona agents who regularly work with investors must treat this as a professional norm. Competence in modern practice includes understanding when federal transparency requirements intersect with residential real estate transactions. In Chapter 3, you have learned what beneficial ownership means, what information must be collected, how the 2026 rule differs from the Corporate Transparency Act, and how to handle client resistance without crossing legal boundaries. You now understand both the informational core of the rule and the professional conduct standards that apply when clients push back. In Chapter 4, we will move into the operational side of the rule, focusing on who is responsible for filing the real estate report and how the filing process works in practice.